CBT Nuggets JNCIS Security Series, Security Policy Basics Part 3. Well, originally, I was only going to have two parts to Security Policy Basics in this Nugget series, but I just have so much to tell you. I'm so excited about this subject that I'm going to add one more part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of just keep on going where I left off in the previous Nugget and do a little bit of a proof of concept for you. And then we're going to continue. We're going to look at different ways to verify security policy. We'll look at logging, which are very important activities on your SRX, as well as some tips for troubleshooting. Sound good? Okay, let's dive in. Okay, I want to start off this nugget with a proof of concept from the previous nugget. So I'm up here at the edit configuration context. And just real quick, I did a rollback to the rescue configuration. So I ran that, did a commit, and now I've got my edit security policy to the default. Okay. So there's my default settings. So what I want to do is I want to show that I can use HTTP through this particular device. So let me see here. Let's go to Control Panel and we'll go to the network connections. Okay, so the Juniper admin is connected and the internet, my normal internet, is disabled. So I'm going through my Juniper admin. So that's what I want to see. So if we do a browser session, bring that over, and we do, let's say, .com. Okay, so we can get to CBT Nuggets through the SRX. Beautiful. Now I'm going to go in the background and create a policy that is going to basically block the application of HTTP, right? And then I'll move it in front of this policy and we'll see how it blocks it. Catch you on the flip side. Okay, so now in the Edit Security Policies context, we'll do a show command. You can see what I did. I created a new policy called No HTTP, and it's in the from zone trust to zone untrust, where I'm matching source address any, destination address any, and then application just simply Junos HTTP. Then the action is to reject. I'm going to choose reject because it's going to create actually more log information, actually an ICMP error message. And then I've got my log entries here. We'll talk more about logging in this nugget, so kind of showing you this. Have to have this in the log, and this is going to be covered in this particular security part 3. Here's my regular policy down here, and so I had to go and I had to insert this policy before this policy, the default policy, to make sure that this action right here wasn't made or rendered neuter by this particular application any than permit down here. Okay, so I went ahead and committed this. The commit's complete. And now we'll bring our web browser over, and there's no smoke and mirrors. I'm still going through the SRX here. And now we'll do cbtnuggets.com, and we're not able to connect because we're trying to use HTTP through that SRX. Now, just to show you that I'm dead serious here, check this out. What if I do HTTPS, paypal.com, all right? Not using HTTP, I'm using port 443 SSL TLS to go to PayPal. Let's see if that's going to work. And there we are at PayPal. Now, you might be asking, okay, that's cool. You showed that we're actually blocking HTTP with our policy, and then we're allowing HTTPS because the other applications are all going to be permitted, right? But what's the practical point behind this? Well, the practical point behind this is for certain zones of your company. You may not want to allow any HTTP at all, because it's going to be basically sending credentials in the clear. It's not protected. So what you could do is you could use this policy, let's say, to your R&D department, for example, to your R&D zone or other certain zones like the finance department, so that if you're using any kind of web browser to go interdepartmental, right, or interzone, I don't mean out to the internet, but I mean interzone, you can kind of force your users to use secure browsing and to only use HTTPS to go to certain zones. So this is a very practical example. I mean, you could even have a separate DMZ where you have just your HTTPS server set up. So it's in a different zone from your public HTTP servers if you wanted to. And so this is a very practical example. It's also something you can do at a very fundamental level for your small business to help bring some extra security there. So I wanted to kind of follow up on the previous nugget to do this proof of concept for you with a very practical application comparing blocking HTTP through allowing HTTPS. Now, one more quick thing. I don't want to block HTTP through my SRX, obviously, so I could go back in and then delete that particular policy in the trust to untrust, or I could just go ahead and do a rollback, which is one thing I really love about Juniper. And you could see I could just roll back to a particular point before that, like, to yesterday. Or if you set up a good solid rescue configuration, which I have, which has kind of a solid base configuration, I just keep rolling back to my rescue config. And that way I can do things to my SRX and I can, blow it up and do all kind of weird policies and always just, kind of roll back to that base configuration. The load is complete, but I still have to commit it, okay? So I'm going to do a commit and quit. That'll commit this and then take me back to operational mode. Now check this out. Let's say I do a rollback rescue, which I did, and it gets me back to the base policy, but then I decide, you know what, wait a minute, that zone policy I created with the no HTTP and all that stuff, maybe I want that after all. So what did I do? I went back into the rollback question mark and found that rollback 1 actually has this policy. So you know what? I did a rollback 1. There it is again. Now let me go ahead and commit this. Now I have my configuration back. Okay, very cool. This feature right here, from somebody who's been with Cisco as I have been since the 90s, this ability, and I can even do the commit with pipe symbols to actually see what changes were committed, for example. Let me show you something that I probably showed you in the JNCIA series, but it could really come in handy here, especially if you're working with policies and you're making modifications and you're testing traffic through your SRX. In operational mode, if you'll do a show configuration command, oops, I don't want to do all that. Let's just go back and do show configuration, and then a pipe symbol. You can compare your existing candidate configuration before you commit it, your existing configuration or candidate configuration to a particular rollback. So we already saw earlier we can go to rollback question mark at the configuration prompt and see your rollbacks and your rescue configuration if you have one. But here we can do this pipe symbol and we can compare to rollback, let's say rollback number 2. And you can see in number 2, this is what I did in this particular rollback. So if I do roll back to number 2, I will actually roll back to a point before I issued these commands, right? So keep that in mind. This doesn't roll back to this configuration, okay? This is what I did at this point. Therefore, if I wanted to undo this particular no HTTP policy that I moved in front of trust to untrust, for example, then I would simply do a rollback 2 and get to the point before that. And of course, you could do rollback 3, rollback 4. It depends on your system. I have up to 5 rollbacks. My Juniper router has more than that. My SRX only has 5. My 2320, 2350 has more rollback possibilities. So keep that in mind. Great thing to do. And it's something you want to look at, especially if you want to kind of get back to previous configurations without having to go through and actually type them all in again. Or, it's good practice. Type them all in again or copy and paste them into the configuration. Let me clear this and we'll get up to where we can now take a look at some logging capabilities with syslog locally. Okay, next let's look at system logging. I'm at the edit configuration. I'm going to issue the command set system and then syslog. And syslog, again, it is a protocol, but it's also really just system logging on the Junos SRX. It's what we call system logging. Now, I'm going to be logging locally, just to my local log files on my SRX. I used to use Kiwi syslog server back before SolarWinds bought it, and I tried to get a new one from SolarWinds, and it was such a hassle. I had to give them a bunch of information. They put a bunch of adware on my system, and I got an email from them like every day, marketing information. So I just got rid of it. So the Kiwi syslog server, unless you're going to go and purchase it from SolarWinds, there's other options out there. Let me just mention to you an option that's a Juniper option. And it's not really covered in this course, but this is a value add. And I'm going to go ahead and configure my syslog. I'm going to show you my syslog setup here for this solution. So for example, it's quite possible as you move forward in your Juniper experience that you're going to run into an environment that's deploying the Juniper STRM. That's the Security Threat Response Manager. And this is actually the STRM 500. So this would be kind of the small branch office, small to medium-sized business version. And there's also a STRM 2500 and STRM 5000 that were our enterprise class devices. So it's quite likely that your organization will be using one of these, and this would be your syslog server among many other things. Okay, it would be basically the device that's receiving all of your syslog information. So you may be in a situation where you have to configure your SRX to send the syslogs, and there's really a couple of different options. There's data plane traffic or forwarding traffic and control plane traffic logs to this STRM 500. Now, in a nutshell, what does this appliance do? Okay, well, it gives you an incredible capability to combine analysis information, also different sets of data, network behavior, security events from the SRX, also threat information and vulnerability profiles from a wide variety of devices to this one appliance, which also, by the way, has its own graphical user interface that you can use, a web-based environment that you can go and you can manage all of those different aspects of security. So syslog is just one of the areas of log management that you can use for this. Very scalable, especially when you get to the higher end appliances. So I'm going to show you how you would configure this specifically to go to the STRM, since it's a Juniper solution, but what I'm going to show you in the configuration will also go to, let's say, one of your other, let's say, Kiwi syslog servers as well. Okay, I'm going to do a commit confirmed because I don't want to save this. Okay, so the scenario is this. SRX is going to one of those STRM devices that I talked about. We have to set up our security logging, system logging for the control plane and the data plane, right? So we're going to first set the system, and it'll be syslog. The first thing we're going to do is put in user. We want to notify the user of an event, and any user, and facility would be any facility, and then I guess what level, and higher would be, we'll do emergency. Okay, so we'll do set system syslog user asterisk any emergency first. Then we will set the system syslog host, and let's say that our particular host syslog server is at 10.10.10.1. Okay, and that's our STRM device. And then we can do any facilities or all facilities, which we want to do, any or all facilities, and basically any level or all levels. Okay, so any. So set system syslog host, IP address of the STRM, and then any. Then let's say the change log, the configuration change log, let's go ahead and do that entry next. And here we can say the change log we can do a particular level, but we don't want the change log. So we're going to say no change log messages. And we also don't want any of the interactive commands. Let me make sure we got that option too. Interactive commands executed by the user interface. So we're going to say we don't want any of those either. So interactive commands, none. And this is a common configuration going to the STRM. We could take a look at that, but let's go ahead and do the data plane. Okay, the data plane is going to be set security, and then, by the way, you can do this as well. These two commands right here are going to work just fine for logging locally. Okay, so these two commands, the log mode, so set security log mode, got a couple of options here. Events or streams, we want to choose the stream option, and it processes logs directly in the forwarding plane. So I want to do the stream option both locally and this is the option you want to use to go to the STRM. STRM is almost stream, so that should give you a good clue there. So set security log mode stream, and then the format. And we definitely want to do our formatting, not the old school syslog, but we want to use the new SD-syslog, the new structured syslog format. Okay, and then for the data plane, we have to put it in a log source address. So we'll say the source address is 192.168.1.2, and then we'll say we want to log using a stream, and let's say we'll call this seclog. I like to use all capital letters for user-defined stuff, and we'll say the category, we're going to go ahead and do everything, category all, and then what is the host? Well, we already determined that the stream seclog host was the STRM server at 10.10.10.1, and we need to also configure a port for this. So the host port that the STRM uses is 514. Okay, so we could do edit security log and do a show command, and we can see our configuration there. Okay, so I kind of showed you that as a setup for the STRM, which is a possible thing that could happen in your future. So I want you to be ready for it. You can always refer back to this section in the security policy part 3. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and set a couple of things up. By the way, this is going to roll back here, but when I roll it back, I do want to make sure a couple of things that I want to set for myself are the set security log mode stream, which I will set, and then set security log format SD syslog. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create a log, okay, a specific log called policy log, and I'll show us, we'll go back to the example again of, trying to send HTTP, because right now our security policy is still in place, okay? So if we were to go take a look down here, edit sec policy, we can see that we've still got this policy in place, no HTTP. So I'm going to go ahead and try to send web traffic and then send HTTPS traffic, and then we'll take a look at this log, this syslog file that we're going to create locally, and we'll also look at some ways that you can kind of search for that as well. Some common ways to use the pipe symbol to find and match certain information in these logs, okay? So let me go ahead and wait for this to roll back, and then I'll catch you on the flip side. Okay, so I'm rolled back here. Let's go ahead and get into configuration mode. And I want to, real quickly, set the security log mode to stream. And I want to set the security log format to SD. Yeah. Let's create our policy log now. So I'm going to set the system syslog, and we'll call the file policy log. And here, of course, we can say, what facilities. We'll say all facilities, and what levels, syslog levels. We'll just do all levels. So any. Okay. Obviously, you could get more granular if you wanted to, but you see your options there. Okay, now we need to actually match a string that's going to show up in these policy messages that are generated by the SRX, especially when I'm doing these types of sessions that are being denied and are being created, right? HTTP, HTTPS. So we'll set the system syslog file, should have just backspaced, okay, policy log, and we want to match, got quite a few options here. I want to match this RT underscore flow session. Now I could go farther and say RT flow session denied, or flow session create, or flow session close. Okay, all those options are available to me, but I'll catch all of those by just putting in RT underscore flow underscore session, right? So I'm just going to go this far. I could get more specific if I wanted to. Okay, so I've got my policy log going now, and let's go back and bring up Firefox. www.cbtnuggets.com. Trying to connect, it's not going to connect because, again, I've got my blocking policy in place and the connection is timed out. Okay, no way. So let's go ahead and move this out of the way and go take a look at our log now. Now I can do a show log, policy log. Oops, didn't like that. Oh, I have to do a run in front of that because I'm in configuration mode. So run show log policy log, and didn't find that file, so let's go ahead and commit and try it again. Okay, there we go. So had to commit that obviously for the log to be created, and you can see our session denied from my host 192 1.2, and then this is an IP address on port 80, and you can see that it is Juno's HTTP that is actually the service that's being denied, and this is the IP address right now of cbtnuggets.com, okay, of that particular web server. May not be the one you get every time, but it's definitely the one for this session. And so you can see we tried several times. Here's our date and timestamp. It is October 18th. And you can see our date and timestamp here. So we tried, and you can see our policy failure. Okay. I'm going to do a run show log policy log, but watch this. I'm going to use a pipe symbol. You may want to, look for certain information in here. So, for example, if I just want to look for something that's happening to the address 74.125.142.113, for example, I could do that. I could just type in here 74.125 matching 142.113, and then of course on port 80. And now I'm going to get a couple of entries, and so I'm weeding out the information here. Okay. You can also you can search on the date stamp, for example. You could search on other keywords that you know that are going to show up in these on a regular basis. You could search for RT flow, for example. If you wanted to search for, let's say, just a date and a certain IP address, you could do that as well. So, for example, I could say I want to match on, and here I need to use the, oops, let's go back and do that again. Let's just go back. I want to match on, in quotes, the October 18th and pipe symbol 74.125.142.113/80. So you can look for, and I'm going to close that, so you can look for a couple of things that you want to see in there, right? A date and an IP address. Something else you can do is I can look at other logs. I mean, I've got other logs I've created. So let's do I think I have a traffic log, maybe. So here's some traffic logs. This has got a bunch of information in it. So this is from earlier experimenting. Okay, and you can see different IP addresses, destination IP addresses. So I can pick one of these IP addresses out here. Let's say 65.55.58.195/80 and do a Control C, and in the traffic log we'll just pipe that and we'll just match 65.55.58.195/80. And you can see I'm just getting those destinations here. So we use the pipe symbol and the match keyword or the match command, the match variable, and we can go in and we can match different values. If I want to see just particular dates, and again, I can also use another pipe symbol as an OR indicator. So I could say I want to see this IP address or something else. If I want to get more than one variable in there, I can use those pipe symbols. This is a way to go through and investigate your logs, and specifically looking for the denials, right? So, and we could even do this as our command. So we said set system syslog file, called it policy log. We would match, and then in quotes, RT flow session deny, in quotes. That's a good way to find denial sessions that match up against our security policy that's denying things. Now I could also say, okay, in this particular traffic log, how many, let's match 65.55.58.195/80. Let's match that IP address, do another pipe symbol, and tell me, okay, well, how many of these denies are in this traffic log to this IP address? and you can see 22 lines. Okay, so we'll go back up here and we'll say, what was that other IP address? If I can get up to it, can't see it from here. But so we can say, yeah, 103.1.115.152/80. Okay, so we can go, we can search specific IP addresses. So let's go back and match 103.115, oops, I'm sorry, .1.115.152, and then we'll pipe that and see how many entries are in there. 12 lines, so 12 deny entries, okay, for that particular IP address. Now, it would be deny entries if the variable we added to our command was that in parentheses. Now, you could also, if you wanted to look for, let's say, troubleshooting between, let's say, this particular host address, and I don't like to do this port number, but I could, but just I could say 192.168.1.2/32 to this IP address. Okay, maybe it's being denied and it's not because of the policy, and I want to do, let's say, a trace option on that. I could create a packet filter, okay, and I could trace it. So let's go to Edit, Security Flow, Trace Options. Now you got to be careful here because this is, for you Cisco people, this is like turning on a debug, right? So you want to be very careful. What you're going to do is you have to create a log file first. Okay, so under this option we would set the file and we'll call it www.tshoot, right? So you create your trace option file, your trace file, and then you have to set up your options. So I would set a packet filter, and we'll just call this test, okay, for right now. And the source prefix is going to be 192.168.1.2, for example, /32. The destination prefix in our example, let's say it's this particular host here. So the scenario is this. We're having sessions denied, but it's not because of the Junos HTTP policy being blocked. So we're going to do some trace options. We're going to do some debugging here. So we're going to say 65.55.58.195.80. Oh, /32. Okay. So then you can send traffic now to 65.55.58.195. Okay. Your normal traffic, and then you could go and you could show that particular log, right? I'll go to the top, run, show, log, and I'm probably not going to have anything in there, but obviously I haven't generated any traffic. www.tshoot. Oh, commit. So you commit it, got to get that file there. Then once you commit it, you can then generate your traffic that you want to debug, right? And then you can go take a look at your file with that command, run show log, and then the name of your trace option log. But again, in a real world environment, in production, you want to set up your trace and then do your test and then go back and take a look at the trace log to find out what it is that's blocking it if it's not your security policy. Okay, so just some extra troubleshooting there that you can do. May be helpful, I hope so, but make sure that you use these options along with your security policy to test and verify and troubleshoot. All right, in JNCIS Security Policy Basics Part 3, I kind of extended some things I wanted to look at in Part 2. We did a kind of a proof of concept there with our HTTP versus HTTPS. Also talked about how to set up syslog to an STRM device or appliance that you may run into in your work out there in Juniper environments. Also setting up some local syslogging to verify session denials of our policy with our local syslog, and then some other options as well, some hypothetical options for setting up trace options, or what we would call debugging on selective bases to files to also do some further troubleshooting. Well, I hope this CBT Nugget was informative for you. I want to thank you for viewing.